Hi, Mike. Okay, so I'm just logging on again because just really enjoyed doing the news story this morning, and wanted to come back as I was just debating my ex boyfriend who I'd been planning to have children with, and I'm a educator, and so I always have planned. And when I tutored children, I would always answer an origin question through to current times, as any good history teacher would do, questioning narratives around the way. Um, because Publishers Clearinghouse, what's published is what's sold, and then what's bought as a common narrative becomes people's perception of what the history actually is. And it is usually not all the way true. Now, is it? So, coming to America, was debating. So he's in the military currently. Um, yeah, so he did not, and he takes everything personally. So it's, but I want to be patient with him because he has brain trauma, and I think that's why he's so emotional, because he's really emotional about it. Which has always been irritating in our relationship. But I love debate, and I love not letting myself be triggered by personal attacks, because he just did the personal attacks bit when he didn't have an answer to my question. And that was, who controlled the media in 1940 America? Um, and he didn't like the fact that, no, you're going to have to relearn World War II. You're going to have to relearn all of American history by debate. The narrative is inaccurate. The events mostly are correct, but the motives and executions are incorrect, because we had a political split in the Civil War where half of the country, like today, wanted to murder and execute an entire other half of the country. And they did. It was our bloodiest war, the most American casualties. So, and then obviously we know the Democratic Party controls the media today, declared war using the media, had the media dictate what Homeland Security saw as domestic terrorists in the COVID lockdowns, where Homeland Security declared anyone who questioned the lockdowns a domestic terrorist, and that was on their website in 2020. So, obviously, all of the media narratives from the Democratic Party in American history need to be debated and called into question, especially World War II, because people are quite stuck on that one still, as they should be, because it was incorrectly covered. It hardly even mentions Prussia, which obviously had been the main rivalry to England, who had become our main ally in World War II, and I guess World War I, right? Yeah. So, duh. You're going to want to check that out. Check it twice. Wait a while. Check it again. So, I guess I have to go get my fish sticks. They're in the oven. I'm actually going to do the rude thing. While my screen is blank, viewers, pick a point of history and find two competing narratives as far as American history in these past 100 years. Two competing narratives. Think about it. We're back. Hey Siri, set timer for 7 minutes. They're not done yet. I also put a whole red pepper in there. So I'm gonna have a roasted red pepper and fish sticks with carrots. Yum. All right. Ranting about this argument. And he also has like a disrespect for American women and an insecurity in not educating himself. That's his problem. So anyway, because I had he was like, when did World War II start? It's like, obviously the plans for World War II started in World War I. There weren't a lot of powers, and the products they were fighting to control and the regions they were fighting control for were the automobiles, so rubber, gasoline, steel, transportation just in general. So there's not a lot to analyze for debating who was vying for tyranny and power and control at the beginning of this past century, 1900. And so World War I, like, who gives a fuck? Obviously, like, we didn't need to go there. Europe could have done its own shit, but we chose to have that interest in the technology above what people would actually vote for if they were well informed. And again, though, like, if you have at the beginning of 1900 a bunch of like podunk farmers not wanting to go forward with technology, and then everybody's pretty stubborn and secular by this time in America. You have like German colonies, you have Mormon colonies, you have Italian factions, you have Irish factions, you have Black groups, you have everybody's already factioned out at that point. So we weren't unified at all after the Civil War. So it's not hard to come to the fact that most people reverted to the tit of the motherland back wherever they had connections in Europe. And if you saw The Godfather, you would know that's true. Come on. and so yeah, I'm getting better at like standing up for myself to him. I have a really bad like sense of humor because that's my adaptation from my trafficking is I'll just laugh at it to survive it. And so when people are being like particularly disrespectful to me, I'll just laugh at it sometimes. He had said, like, oh, you did so many drugs, your brain's fried. It's like, okay, you just admitted that the Democratic Party controlled the media in 1940, yet you want to believe that the plans for the American involvement in World War II started in 1941? Come on, bud. Come on, get a fucking clue. You know what I mean? So the title of this clip, because I just cleansed that conversation with Dan Crenshaw, We Hold These Truths podcast episode where he has a historian on, which was delightful to follow that shitty conversation that I enjoyed defending myself in. Brian Kilmeade, who does like deep analysis of history. Yeah, because you got to. Otherwise, you're just repeating what somebody else has researched and you're trusting a random person who had an incentive to sell a story over analyzing it for yourself. You know, grow a pair, be a man. Are you going to educate your kids to be smarter, or do you want them to be just as faulty in understanding things as you are? Maybe I said that. Maybe I didn't. But I would never let my kids be anything but fully educated, and then also hear just all their perspectives apart from mine, from like the base outline, origin, events, current times that I would provide them. And so thank you. I haven't watched the rest of the podcast with Brian Kilmeade because I was wanting to log on to do my own, but I had to do a cleanse after Joe took personal attacks on me because he's insecure about his brain injuries, I guess. And probably because he has kind of a bit of a disrespect for American women and doesn't really want to protect them or let them be fully independent, as most insecure men have come to choose as their path of perspective on American women, I guess. Just super gross. And just no bueno. So, or it's just personal because of our relationship and how it ended. I guess is the other thing. But he seems to have a bit of an issue with respecting women. So, and that's his path. He means to, but again, like he has a really gnarly military experience. And so like that emotional part or having the fear of losing like a partner like he has is obviously going to just kind of circle around brain injuries because emotions are a weird thing when related to brain injuries. Anyway, I love debating with him though. And then sometimes he'll give me like a good bit of history and then I'm like, okay, now we can have a conversation. But his real hard time respecting perspective. That's valid. So so Dan's point of his recent episode was that the progressive is trying to rewrite history to suit their narrative, to sell newspapers and control decisions and ultimately their petty pennies in the stock market because they really just want power and control. They're not actually into growth. Otherwise, windmills would actually make sense. So, yeah, Dan Crenshaw just doing it by the true will of the people. Just him and all of his guests he have on. Just like if I were asked today by Dan Crenshaw and Andy Stumpf, which of our podcasts provides for you the most quality, pro-America, diverse, like all-encompassing perspectives. Well, it would be Dan Crenshaw because he's actually in office. And he has the physicists on, which is obviously what we need to move forward. We need to have the best physicists. We can't be, we're open colleges and we have people from India and it's going to be so great. We have people from Turkey and Iran and just like whatever, everybody do physics, bam, bam. No, you need to have American physicists, not at all dual citizens, true blue in a box, kind of like when the bomb was developed and you couldn't even disclose you were working on it. That we need more of those and they need to be factioned out state by state. In fact, right now, every state needs to quite literally realize you need your own nuclear technology to keep boundaries, fucking boundaries. Okay. This isn't a tea party. So you need to, every state really does need their own technology for defense, especially because we have officially, the Democratic Party declared war on half the country. So that's where we're going to be. It's not going to be resolved. So you better have boundaries going forward. Everybody should have their own nuclear technology, like should be different. I don't think we should all have the same energy anything. Everybody's grid, I think, should be separate at this point. Obviously, that will be, and already is, a main vulnerability that we have this massive connected grid that other foreign entities we already know, as many people have reported on, have been easily infiltrated and often are. Like the internet and our electric grid. It's just any foreign entity at any time. There's no boundaries there either. So I'm going to go get my fish sticks. Consider that, audience. Okay. Okay, so this was the other part of our debate that I came to myself studying this semester before my safety was such an issue that I had to go down to the one class that I could handle for my health as physician recommended. I was taking a what was it? A French Revolution class? Yeah, it was mainly on the French Revolution, but the professor had provided a book or at least a reading um, that was on the Prussian Metals Guild of late 1700s. I was like, fuck yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This is actually where we need to be going back to right now for debate, for accurate history. None of this is accurate that kids are learning in school. It's not, unless teachers take it that extra mile. Very few history teachers do open that debate up for events that have occurred. And so loved that he did this. I want to say his name was Tyler Gambos, professor at UWS. So he had us read about and I gave it away, but it was about the railway and when that was just exploding, and how there was a Prussian metals guild that controlled the technology for over 100 different alloys that no one else had the technology for. And so this is before Germany. This is before World War I even. There's this Prussian metals guild. And if we go back to Victorian era, and whoever the fuck it was in the late 1700s, I guess James, and then Victoria came in. I don't even know. Was it still James in 1812? I think so. And then anyway, fucking Victoria is the one I'm trying to talk about. It's like late 1800s. It's Victoria. Yeah. Yeah. She had like a really long reign. So under the queen who just died of England, I think she had the second longest reign. And she was a fucking psychopath. So she had her husband died young. She never remarried, and she had an obsession with control to a biological degree. So she would actually, this is part of the motivation for a lot of the generals in Prussia to eventually not give a fuck in World War II, I guess. So what she would do is when a child was born with a defect that would turn off China, who she was trying to capitalize trade with, the Empress of China at the time. I think the mother of Mao, I don't know, or the mother of his wife. Whatever. You guys should, I mean, you can generalize eras. That's what I'm going to do. Because I don't want to look it up while I'm talking to you. And so, my audience. And so, it's pretty fucking sad. So, her grandchildren, if they had been born with defects that would turn off trading partners, specifically from South Pacific, China, India, she would send them to Prussia, and then they would torture them to try to cure them of their defects so they could come back and be with their mothers. And then their mothers would have to, you could choose to defend your child. Of course, you would be banished. Or you could have another child, forget about them, and be under the queen and get like opium and sweets and tea and coffee and be dressed as you wanted to in the finest fucking shit and just feel better about yourself when you're actually a piece of garbage. And so that's what most of the people the mothers around Victoria agreed to do, was when their children would have defects. And again, there was a lot of chemicals, industrialized England at this time. So birth defects were common. And you would be sent to be tortured for pharmaceutical reasons and just not undermine trade with other nations. And so, and the Americans, right? Because at that time, it was the Democratic Party, KKK, controlled the media. And then, so you'd want to also look good to the American people. So high society would overly invest or inflate mainly like things that looked good. So like textiles and fucking bullshit. And so, staying at certain hotels, food, whatever, hierarchy in general, just trying to sell that idea back. And it was like happened in no time at all because we had just did 1776, late 1800s. We were back to the obsession with high society. No surprise there. And so, definitely lost my train of thought, which is we're just going to go back to the point I was making. We'll circle back to Victoria again because motives matter, and definitely historical motives from old grievances, especially in nations with centuries of history and that controlled 3/4 of the world, which England did, and then the competing VOC. And Parliament could be argued piggybacked off that and then did a little, I don't know, because this is what like I kind of respect about the VOC. So in that, when was the VOC founded? Like 1600, later 1600s, later 1600s. So Spain had lost all their money. France is just a great location, so they never had to really worry about all the times they lose all their fucking money because somehow they convince everybody to give them fucking money all the time. It's weird how they're able to do that. And so late 1600s, I think it's mid to late, the VOC, so the Dutch East India Company is competing with the British naval trade routes for control, particularly around India and then the Spice Islands. And so something the Dutch East India Company is able to do to trump England is they're able to gain capital on the spice trade. And that's where they just get fucking wealth. Because again, spices end up curing so many diseases. You have industrial England, so many ailments. The water's gross. People are throwing shit out the window again. Like we had just did this. England with Thomas Malthusian had been already planning for genocide to fix overpopulation because in industrial England, all of a sudden you had all these countryside people hoard to London to try to gain this wealth for power and control themselves. And then they complained they didn't have any milk or meat. And it's like, bitch, you left your farm. You're the reason there isn't food. You slimy little commoner. You know what I mean? Just to take a perspective that's different, I guess. But it is true. And you can blame a lot of the Irish for that too. Just trying to, old grievances, trying to drown England. It's like, bitch, you're connected to us. Like, it's so, and so when the spices came, it was so many cures for things that had been ailing people. And so you had that, food tasted better. Food tasted better and it was medicine. And then, so they really, the VOC, like, bam. And then you have Parliament, the English Parliament. Just, what, you think you own property for 500 years and you get to make decisions? Yeah. Parliament. I want a whole class on Parliament, but you know what? I can't find a university that offers one. Okay, now this is my theory part. So, and I guess you could debate the rest of it as theory if you want to. Whatever. I don't care. I'd rather a debate than not. And so, God, just thinking of like just the explosion of wealth really at that time. It's like late 1600s, going into the industrial era of the 1700s, needing healthy workers actually to mass produce things. So nutrition being a real concern for workers, survivability. You want your workers to live because they need to produce things. And then you have the international competition, right? Because Russia's like, oh, steel. You want to compete in making steel, eh? And then so Russia went crazy with the steel manufacturing. And my belief is that we didn't actually gain our independence then in 1776 as Americans from the English king. We gained it from Parliament because Parliament, and this made Joe so mad. It's like, stop being a fucking cunt. So Parliament had surpassed control in 1699 of England. So Parliament, in my theory, had just alloyed. Obviously, like if the king was just losing his mind, not effective, a serious worry of and a need for industrialization and a worry of people who can manage it well, I think led to Parliament saying, fuck this king, we got to ally with the VOC, because we have, like, this is going to be huge and this could be a real disaster. And then I'd lose all my sheep farms. I can't have that. So my view is in that Parliament alloyed with the VOC. And so when we gained our independence, we were actually gaining it from Parliament. I don't think the king in 1776 of England really was in control of decisions as much as he was just sick all the time and couldn't do anything. And if you watch The King on Netflix, which I really love Timothée Chalamet's portrayal of this character, who was like a 1400, I think it was Henry II, Henry VIII. I don't know who. No, it wasn't. I don't know who it was. Henry the something, the fourth. I don't know. One of the Henrys. Anyway, he has as like the Kingdom of England is actually establishing. So it was all tribal as well before that. Constant changes of royal lineage combating just for control of the future of England and Ireland and Scotland. And so I like that in that series, they portrayed his advisors kind of how I imagine Parliament in England ultimately forming, which is being insidious and having always like a backstock or something that they were trying to do in their chosen region outside of England. And so I really liked that portrayal because that's kind of how I see it having gone to just like common sense analysis is that you've expanded. So England at its height controlled 3/4 of the world. So this thing right here. So where's England? There you are. Little itty bitty island. Ireland, the most coastline out of any nation in the world. Ireland. So port. And then, so that's Iceland. Sorry, Ireland's right there. So you have this tiny island having naval control just all up in here, all the way down the Horn of Africa, all the way up through this, all the way down around India, trade routes all the way to China. Obviously already colonies in America, the British Islands that had been controlled. Again, Spain, the Pope wouldn't give them any more money, and then they were tired. So they were just kind of like waiting in the back, planning to be a shitty country as they are, just defrauding people, ripping them off. and doing low-key socialism while they're pretending to be innovative and not ripping people off, which they definitely are. And then you have the British in Belize. I don't know where else the British go in South America, but 3/4 of the world, and their navy is tops. And their footmen have also been just established. Like they have loyal footmen and a really good program for footmen. And so that's a really successful campaign that England did, and still to this day has. And they're consistent, and they've always been declarative and separate from the Catholic Church. And so, unlike the other kings of Europe, England was able to proxy themselves with the Church of England and say, listen, Pope, you want to come get some? You can come fucking get some. Do you want to? And so the Pope wasn't able to get his greasy hands in England like he was able to Italy, France, and Spain, Portugal, etc. America, you. What the Catholic Church did to America is tyranny. Just saying. So that was the point I made with Joe. Hated it. And I kept trying to say, like, I'm not talking down to you. You need to know the history of where we were birthed from. And America was born out of England. And so he's French. And he lovely shared his history of his French lineage. And it's like, okay. But America wasn't born out of Louisiana. America was born from England. England's still our largest ally and most successful empire in all of history, next to America. So you better know England all the way in and all the way out, or you will not understand America. So I invite comments, and you never take your eye off of your greatest ally or your most feared historical enemy. And that's how I see it. Do I have any other points on that? Oh, I did want to circle back to the other part of my debate with Joe, because he didn't like the idea that things didn't happen on the dates he was told they happened, that there have always been plans for control, because people who vie for power do not stop vying for power. You keep on with it, because if you have a goal and you're dedicated to it and you're willing to sacrifice life for it in the first place, and certainly back then when you were planning for the future of your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, you were absolutely planning a century forward, if not more. That's commonplace. So World War II, plans had started in World War I, and then certainly back in the conflict between Prussia, where Victoria sent the disabled children to be tortured and used for pharmaceutical and psychological research, as that was also developing like the wealth of owning knowledge, right? Because you have this huge empire, you're educating your subjects to own the knowledge, was certainly a wealthy enterprise as well. So World War II definitely started back when Victoria was doing this kind of torture to the children of England, and they were banished to Prussia. Prussia had a really beautiful community, actually, and they had a lot of people that would look after these children, and even in that torture, try to provide them real health care. And so you have these real awkward loyalties, actually, that I want to debate and learn more about myself, because I'm still like questioning so much. But they have right technology, they have morality, and so they have actually this loyalty that reached really far. For example, we never talk about the Nazis in Saudi Arabia. We never talk about the Nazis in Turkey or in North Africa. They had loyalty that was already established. So they weren't able to just take over one day because they had the trains and the automobiles. They had old loyalties already established. And that is my rant.